In the boundless expanse of the Minecraft universe, there was a solitary island surrounded by dense jungle, discovered by a player named Steve. Steve was a bold adventurer who constantly sought out new challenges. When he reached this mysterious island, he decided to explore and tame it. Like Robinson Crusoe, Steve found himself stranded when his boat was destroyed by a fierce storm. But instead of despairing, he resolved to shape his own destiny and build a new life on the island. With nothing but the few supplies he could salvage, Steve began his first steps as a survivor. The initial days were tough for Steve. He had to learn how to craft tools, gather resources, find food, and build a safe home. With perseverance and determination, he battled against the dangers of the wilderness and the hostile creatures that emerged at night. As time went on, Steve began to adapt to his new life on the island. He constructed a small hut on the beach, cultivated fields, and tamed animals to provide his own source of sustenance. Every day he continued to explore the island, searching for new resources and opportunities to expand his small domain. Yet, despite his progress, Steve felt a profound loneliness. He longed for human companionship and missed the world beyond the island. However, fate had other plans for him. He began building a new boat, working on it for 356 days until he could finish it. Steve decided to test the boat and sail around the island. At a headland, he saw a strong current. If he came near that headland, he had to be very careful, because if he got caught in that current, he could be swept out to sea by its force, and perhaps be unable to regain the island.
Yet again, I should become a warning example for ignorant sailors. For scarcely had I reached the headland, and was not even a boat's length away from the coast, when I found myself in very deep water and in a raging current. My boat was torn away with such violence that, despite all my efforts, I couldn't even hold it on the edge of the stream, but instead saw myself being carried further and further away from the whirlpool that remained to my left. No wind came to my aid, and with my oars, I could do next to nothing. I began to consider myself lost because since the current went around both sides of the island, I knew its ends must converge several miles further on. I now look back at my desolate, lonely island, the loveliest place in the world for me in this situation, and all the bliss my heart desired was just to be back there again. I reached out my hands with longing desire. "Oh, you fortunate coast," I said. "Shall I never see you again? Where will I, miserable creature, end up?" It is impossible to describe the dismay I felt when I saw myself being driven almost 2 miles into the vast ocean. I despaired, completely believing I would never reach my island again. Nonetheless, I labored until my strength was almost exhausted, trying to keep the boat as close to the north as possible. Finally, at noon, as the sun stood directly over my head, I felt a light breeze blowing from south-southeast towards me. It eased my heart somewhat, and it pleased me even more when, about half an hour later, a pretty little storm began to blow. Meanwhile, I had frighteningly drifted far from the island. If only the smallest cloud or light fog had come in my way, it would have meant an unexpected end for me. Because I had no compass on board, and would therefore not have known how to steer towards the island, once it disappeared from my sight even once. But the weather remained clear. I now set about straightening my mast and spreading the sail again, and as best I could, held the direction northwards just to get out of the current. Hardly had I put sail and mast in order, and the boat began to glide slowly when I noticed from the clarity of the water that a change in the current must be nearby. For where the current was rushing, the water was turbid, whereas where it was holding back, the strength of the current was diminishing. Shortly afterwards, about half a mile to the east, I noticed a strong whirlpool. I was very glad to be able to steer my boat into this whirlpool. Since the wind also began to blow stronger, I happily spread my sails against it and merrily sailed ahead of the breeze, carried by the strong current. With the help of the whirlpool, I covered a little more than a nautical mile, and then I noticed that it stopped and could no longer serve me. But now I found myself between the two other great currents, the southern one that had carried me away from the shore and the northern one that flowed about a nautical mile further on the other side. Here in the middle, in the shelter of the island, I found the water completely still and flowing in no direction. Since the wind was still blowing favorably, I steered directly towards the island. Even chérie, I did not make progress as fast as before. When I arrived at the shore, I fell to my knees and thanked for my rescue. Now I gave up every thought of escape in my boat. That is, of ever leaving the island with my own strength.
One day, while on an exploration trip, Steve stumbled upon a strange cave deep in the jungle. Curious, he entered and discovered a hidden portal that led him into another dimension. There, he encountered another player who was also stranded. Alex. Alex was an experienced adventurer who, like Steve, was seeking new worlds. Together, they decided to explore the dimension and experience new adventures. They battled powerful monsters and uncovered hidden treasures. With Alex by his side, Steve no longer felt alone. Together, they forged plans for the future and dreamed of new adventures to experience together. And so, they continued their journey through the Minecraft universe, ready for whatever fate had in store for them.